Hello, I'm Dr. Carolyn Yeager, Associate Professor at St. Joseph's Seminary, Dunwoodie, and a member of the faculty of the Sacred Heart Institute. This is the second of my 3 videos that have been produced for the Sacred Heart Institute. The first was on runaway thoughts. This video is on isolation and loneliness, and the third video is stress management revisited. These videos are being made available to help you get through this very difficult time, and for you to know that while you are feeling very much alone, you are not alone. Your family, your friends, your parishioners, they're all praying for you, and like you, cannot wait to get back to our normal way of life, our routines, our social gatherings, our sacraments, our masses. We all want to have some real eye-to-eye contact and the occasional hug. As this quarantine goes on, I know that many of you may feel more isolated and more lonely. This 15-minute talk is meant to help you with those upsetting but normal feelings. As we move to a longer period of time when we are tending to feel a little isolated and probably a little bit lonely, we're going to do this talk in a few different ways. We're going to start off doing a little bit of self-awareness about who you are, who you've always been, and who you are at this point in time in your life. We're going to look at how we're going to get to more inner peace, and most importantly, we're going to look at the differences between feeling helpless and feeling hopeless, how they contribute to feeling isolated or lonely, and what to do about it. Okay, so let's start off with this little self-awareness exercise. And I want you to really just sit and think. You're not doing anything anyway, but at this point in your quarantine, do you see yourself as experiencing this isolation as something that's really peaceful, serene, the break you've needed for a long time? Are you contemplating as if you were sitting on Walden's Pond? Pay attention to how you're feeling. Can you relate to that? Or does our next slide represent who you are much more accurately? Do you feel like you're Jack Nicholson, the character in The Shining? Are you feeling like you're ready to go crazy, that you can't possibly do this for a long time? Are you the kind of person who naturally enjoys being alone? Do you often wish that you were here? Do you wish that you were here now more than ever before? Do you feel like you're there even though you're not, because you're alone in your parish and there aren't a lot of people around? You do feel isolated because you are. I know that some of you are alone, very much alone in a rectory. Some of you might be with other priests, but it doesn't mean that you feel close to those other priests. I've talked to priests who say there's very little interaction throughout the day, which makes you feel isolated even when you're physically not isolated. Are you the kind of priest that has always wanted to be in this kind of an environment? Hopping, many people around, always activity, super social. Your normal like or dislike for social contact has a lot to do with how you're going to be handling this time of serious low social contact. I want to say that your answers to most of these questions have probably been already set for most of your life. The research tells us that our temperament is set by about age 3. 3. That's actually an astonishing statement, but based on research. If your mom is still alive and you ask her, do you think my temperament is basically the same as it was when I was a very young boy? She'll probably say yes, unless you've had certain things happen along the way. But so who you are now is probably not much different from who you've always been. The better you know yourself and know your personal, behavioral, and mental tendencies, the better off your mental health would be. Self-awareness, self-monitoring, and self-discipline are the keys to healthy living as a priest in general. So what I mean by that is being aware of who you are, knowing who you are, monitoring yourself, because in many cases no one else is really monitoring you, taking responsibility for that monitoring, and then ultimately exercising self-discipline. This goes across the board. Many people are talking about how they're going to be so fat and they're going to need rehab after this quarantine. But knowing about your eating, your drinking, your sleeping, your thoughts, what's going on in your head, your behaviors, all involve self-discipline. Obviously, from what I said before, if you are a social person, a person who enjoys being around people, you're outgoing, connected, busy, this quarantine is going to be a little bit harder on you. However, I have to say that even loners begin to be lonely. If you check out Facebook, there's lots of memes of people who say, I never liked people, I never wanted to be around people, I never wanted to go out, but I don't like being told that I can't go out. In other words, inner peace feels more and more difficult to find, no matter what your normal level of social interaction is. When I think of peace in solitude, there's a particular person who comes to mind. Some of you may know him. His name is Father Pio Mandato. He's a Franciscan missionary hermit. He is under the auspices of the Diocese of Scranton in Pennsylvania. He's been a hermit for at least 20 years or so. It would be so great if I could have him make a recording for you about life as a hermit, what it's like to be alone. He could probably give you such great advice about how to live in the calm of everything around you in prayer, how to be isolated. But he's a hermit and he doesn't come out that much, so I couldn't get him to come to my house and have something to say to you. But I would say this, I suspect that his daily life hasn't really changed one bit since the pandemic broke. And his calm is his always calm. His peace is his always peace. And as they say, I wish we could each take just one page from his book on how to do this. If you don't want your mind to be a terrible storm on the ocean and you'd like to achieve a little bit more inner peace and calm, I'm going to give you 2 pieces of advice, and here's my first one. Lower your dose of mass media, of the news. You don't need to know as much as they keep insisting on telling us about what's going on. I think as a nation, we're subscribing to the idea that in order to keep people inside and to obey the regulations that the government is trying to put on us, they have to continue to terrorize us with information. I think it's okay if you're the kind of person that can just say to yourself, that's what they're saying, I know I have to stay in. But for a lot of people who started out scared, they continue to be scared. And some of these news reports and pictures and images and statistics only make people go from anxious to terrified. So I'm going to say that they are not in the stage where they want to comfort us yet. They still want to scare us enough to keep us inside, because you know that we have to always worry about the 5% of people that won't listen to the rules. But I also believe that we as Catholics always like to share the good news. That is what we do. So I think it's important to hear some good news and to focus on some good news. We know that over 200,000 people globally have fully recovered from COVID-19. I read something that said the good news this morning, just a couple of days ago, is that we can see and share hope. We're going to get into hope in a little bit. We can see the recovery rate rising and the death rate seeming to slow down. We can see infections still climbing, but know by observable reported data that growing numbers of infected doesn't automatically translate to geometrically increasing numbers of deaths. In fact, we're seeing the recovery rate grow far faster now, and that's what we need to focus on. Harvard Medical School just said on March 19th that they believe that 99% of people with the virus will recover. They see a death rate of about 1%. Sometimes we just need to hear a little good news in the midst of all of the bad news. If you only listen to the scary news every day, there's no doubt that it's harder to be positive every day. Here's piece of advice number 2. Try to make every day a new day. Pray for refreshment. Refreshment from your negative thoughts and your negative feelings. I'm recording this video on Palm Sunday, watching my parish priest celebrate Mass alone with a live stream. I've been doing that most days, and many of you are doing a fantastic job with your daily Masses and your opportunities for the live stream. But of course, it leaves me wanting so much more. But I remember that the resurrection is coming. I remember that my yearly Chaplet of the Divine Mercy starts on Good Friday. It's one of my favorite devotions, and it's so appropriate at this time to do it. I remember that if I take this one day at a time and I pray for perseverance, I can make it through as many days as we have to. I hope that you can feel the same way. My third and last piece of advice is to know the difference between helplessness and hopelessness. I know that a lot of you feel helpless, and in fact, many of you are pretty helpless. There's not a lot you can do. You can't personally change anything about how helpless you are, and it's not your nature to be helpless. You're a shepherd. You're used to doing things. I just talked about Masses that are being held on live stream. Not to make a comparison, but NBA players said we can't play without an audience, and performing sacraments and holding Mass is not normal. You do feel helpless. I'm going to steal something from AA and say, if you really start to hit the wall of helplessness, make a left turn. It's an important thing. Don't just keep hitting that wall. I think it's time for you to really do something that makes you feel helpful. It first involves being positive. You have to be positive before you can reach out or do anything. But I think that you can go and make a phone call. We all owe phone calls to people. Go to social media. I've had several priests, older ones, who say that they stay off of Facebook. I've mentioned Facebook a few times. They don't want to be on social media, but now might be the time that people are desperately looking for you to give them some guidance, to be positive, to make a little video, to comment on people's postings, something positive. You can even learn how to use an emoji. You can get somebody younger to show you how to make a Bitmoji, which is what you would look like. Encouraging other people is really important to them, and it will make you feel more useful. People out there really do need encouragement, and I'm not even talking about the darkest circumstances of people that are having deaths around them or that are sick. I'm just talking even about the people that are home, hoping for the best, trying to stay out of danger's way. Even if you don't feel like it, you do it anyway. We know that we can't change what's happening. I said we cannot change the circumstances, but we can change how we respond to it, how we react to it. It will go a long way to help you feel less helpless. Being positive gives other people a sense of hope, and it will ultimately give you some hope as well when you realize the impact that you can have in helping others to feel more hopeful. Harvard Medical School many years ago did research on what brings people to the place of suicidal ideation. What's the factor between who thinks about killing themselves or does hurt themselves or makes a gesture to hurt themselves? And the difference is it's not helplessness, because people thought it was helplessness. It's hopelessness. It is the variable. When people give up hope, which is not a Catholic concept that you would give up hope. We share hope. But when people feel like their situation is hopeless and they're ready to give up hope, that's our most dangerous time in working with people. I know I told you to go to social media and reach out to people and do what you can. Go take a walk outside, see people, wave from afar. But I also think it's important to understand that when you speak to people and you are an encouraging word and you are positive, you can't imagine how much better it makes them feel. So in the past week, I spent 1,125 minutes talking to patients, either over the phone, I'm working remotely, or on FaceTime. And every single time I talk about the positive recoveries, the work towards vaccinations. Now we're going to be checking people's antibodies. By the way, we're going to find out a lot of people had this that didn't know they had it. But all the things to heal people and to go forward with vaccines and to get ahead of the virus. Every time I try to tell them to look at the positive things and to have hope, that there's reason to have hope. Even in a desperate situation, there's reason to have hope. They always say, thank you, I feel so much better. Wow, I wasn't thinking about that. Oh, I'm only focusing on what the news is saying. This is where you can help yourself with your own sense of helplessness and hopelessness and give hope to people out there. Everybody wants hope, and you do have the ability to give it to them. At this point in time, and we're definitely not at the end of this, many spirits are already crushed. Many people are experiencing death and terrible separation and isolation. Many people are terrified. You may be feeling helpless or hopeless, lonely or isolated, but you're not alone. You may be physically alone, but you do not need to be spiritually, mentally, or philosophically alone. Reach out to others. Get out of your own head. Push yourself to have virtual contact and be well. Well, I hope that this video has given you some motivation to not feel so helpless or hopeless. Both helplessness and hopelessness lead to feelings of isolation and loneliness. And my most important thing that I wanted you to get from today is that there's something you can do about it, and you have the power to do something about it. Walk in faith with hope. Keep your mind focused and clean of irrational thoughts. And please, please, please keep busy. God bless.